only a few days away from the latest issue of Doctor Who magazine hitting store shelves, so as is customary, we've got the brand new cover, Doctor Who magazine issue 588, and it's meant to be a celebration of the Sarah Jane adventures. The image here is that we've got David Tennant and Elizabeth Sladen with K9, who has been cropped out of the image. The shame, the indignity. We love Sarah Jane. Russell T Davies leads our celebration of her further adventures. We've also got Daniel Anthony, Phil Ford, Tommy Knight, Anjali Mahindra, and much more, and competitions and all the good stuff. The official Doctor Who magazine. Now, this has picked up a little bit of discourse on Docky Who Twitter, and I understand that Docky Who Twitter Doctor Who magazine discourse is often frequently toxic and also very frequently wrong. Like, it has been the source of a lot of controversy or non-controversies over the past few months, but I do actually think that some of the issue here is well-founded, because if this is meant to be a celebration of Elizabeth Sladen, is meant to be a celebration of the Sarah Jane adventures, why is David Tennant featured so prominently on the front? He is front and centre. He is way bigger and more dominant in the frame than Elizabeth Sladen, who, like, we get full body of David Tennant. We have half of Elizabeth Sladen, and K9 doesn't even have a face. But instead, for Doctor Who magazine, it is all basically 60% David Tennant, who only appeared in one story of the Sarah Jane adventures. A well-regarded story, a story that has been frequently released on Blu-ray because of his attachment to the franchise. But if this is meant to be the Sarah Jane Adventures Elizabeth Sladen showcase issue of Doctor Who magazine, then why is David Tennant so prominent? And this has been a recurring theme, a recurring trend for Doctor Who magazine over the past few months. The first issue that dropped after The Power of the Doctor was broadcast was David Tennant front and centre instead of Jodie Whittaker. This is her regeneration story, and it was perceived by a lot of people as, okay, we've just booted Jodie Whittaker out the door, let's talk immediately about the 14th Doctor. I do think a bit of that anger was misplaced. I do think that because it dropped in December, it was the Christmas issue, it had to be something that was like a yearly annual. I think there was a Doctor Who annual as well, which had David Tennant front and centre and had like a little image of Jodie Whittaker regenerating in the corner. I kind of get that. But with this seems like a much more notable trend, especially with the fact that there are much more appropriate pictures if you needed to have David Tennant on the cover as well. Like this one. Like, I don't get it. Why couldn't they have used this one? And people have been saying, oh, because the logo would block it. You can figure it out. You can, like, you put the logo on the other side, or do the full Monsters Inc. and just obstruct his face. Do it, you cowards. But yeah, this would have been a much better photo if you needed to have David Tennant involved in it, because they're much more prominent. You haven't cut K9's face off. And also, like, I just think that with the amount of very clever and very talented photo editors and digital artists who work with and at Doctor Who magazine, maybe you could have done a big collage or a big compilation of all of the supporting characters and maybe have had Elizabeth Sladen and David Tennant front and centre. I don't know. Like, this has had a bit of a backlash from Doctor Who Twitter, and also some people were saying, what's the big deal? Of course, he's going to be front and centre because he's part of the story. But the novelisation of The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith managed to still have Elizabeth Sladen front and centre, so it's not like it's not like they're lacking images or they're lacking the ability to edit the image. I don't want to try and make a mountain out of a molehill here, but I do think that the concerns of fans who are just worried that it's all about the optics, like the moment that Jodie Whittaker has left the series, they have to put David Tennant front and centre, and the fact that this does also seem to be a gendered trend. Like, this is meant to be the Elizabeth Sladen showcase story, but no, it's going to be David Tennant front and centre. Like, let me just bring up the latest cover of Doctor Who magazine, as in the one that's currently on store shelves. Why do they not have the latest cover of on the Twitter? It's the one with the robots of death on the front, but they don't have them. They can do stylistic covers. This is just the mask from the robots of death on the front. Oh yeah, but David Tennant's also here, just in a little banner in the corner. So yeah, you can have banners and you can do stylistic things with the covers. But the fact that this is becoming specifically a gendered issue now, with David Tennant, and he has usurped both Jodie Whittaker and Elizabeth Sladen on covers that are meant to be celebrations specifically of them and those eras, is a little bit concerning. Like, this is an issue that has been a chicken and egg scenario in marketing and in sociology for a long time. do covers or franchises or merchandise with women on the cover or whatever, do they not sell as well because you're not pushing them front and center, or are they not selling as much because they have women in them? It's one of those non-falsifiable things, which is really, it's difficult to categorically prove. This was discourse literally like a decade ago, where James Stephanie Sterling of the Jimquisition did a fantastic video breaking down the gendered aspect of video game covers. I think it was 2K Games who made BioShock Infinite. And they just had Booker DeWitt on the cover as like being a gun bro, BioShock Infinite. Whereas the actual makers and the developers of the game fought really, really hard to try and have Elizabeth on the cover because it's her story. But no, the box set was just generic gun bro stuff. And it was only in re-releases years later that Elizabeth was able to be on the cover despite her being the main character. Naughty Dog fought hard against Sony to try and get Ellie on the cover of The Last of Us, because it's meant to be a two-hander. Ultimately, they were able to win that fight and get Ellie on the cover, but the fact that they had to fight at all shows that there was massive systemic issues in the video game industry and the marketing and the covers specifically. And it seems like this is still an issue, maybe not to an extent that it was 10 years ago, but it's a bit concerning, isn't it? People in response to this cover on Twitter have been saying clearly Doctor Who magazine hate women. Clearly they're trying to fellatio Russell T Davies, or Russ T Davies is trying to put his ego on everything. And I think that sort of discourse and that sort of response is very, it's not constructive. I also think that Russ T Davies has significantly better things to do than try and dictate Doctor Who magazine covers. Like, he's currently overseeing the launch of a TV series starring Helena Bonham Carter for ITV. He's currently halfway through filming a series of Doctor Who with Ncuti Gatwa and also overseeing post-production on the 60th anniversary specials. He'll have very little creative involvement with Doctor Who magazine. But I do think it shows maybe a bit of bias with Doctor Who magazine, or maybe these are orders coming from on high, from Panini magazine or something, saying David Tennant needs to be on the majority of covers because David Tennant sells. And I have no doubt that David Tennant does sell. The first cover with David Tennant on it, the first full-blown cover with the exclusive images of David Tennant. Here we go, this is the yearbook I was on about, 23 yearbook, and Ncuti Gatwa and Jodie Whittaker were just here. Like, I kind of understand it, but we are definitely now seeing a trend. This version, this Doctor Who magazine, This Is the Future with David Tennant, these are like brand new images and the 14th Doctor's first adventure. These ones were incredibly hard to get a hold of. These were selling like hotcakes. And I'm kind of worried that maybe the fact that this issue was so successful that now they're just going to put David Tennant on everything, even if he is encroaching on what is meant to be a celebration of the Sarah Jane Adventures and Elizabeth Sladen. Have him on the cover, but like I said, there are better images to use. Or maybe you can do some sort of collage or some sort of edit. The yearbook was unforgivable. The yearbook was understandable in a vacuum, but because this is now part of a larger trend, there is cause for concern here, I think. And look, like, this is a wholly commissioned original image of the Daleks. Like, they clearly have the resources to do brand new images or to do something much more original iconography. This is just publicizing the comic strip on the inside. I mean, Doctor Who magazine did have a decline during the Chibble era. I understand why they're doing it, but yeah, it's not good. The problem is that I'm not saying that you're lying, Tiny Matty, but we don't have the data because we don't have Doctor Who magazine statistics. We don't have the stats, we don't have the sales figures for Doctor Who magazine, and anyone claiming that they do have it is frequently lying. It's hard to distinguish whether or not it was just a lack of interest in the Jodie Whittaker era or the fact that the show didn't have as many episodes during that time. The seasons were awkwardly distributed in terms of time span. There was a pandemic which disrupted supply chains and disrupted subscriptions and stuff. It's hard to compare. Maybe the magazine did have a financial and audience decline during the Jodie Whittaker era, but it's hard to ascribe the cause of that and whether or not there was sort of some creative liberties being taken at the decisions with Panini and Doctor Who magazine in general. Yeah, I don't think it's a malicious thing, it's just something they have to do better. I don't think Doctor Who Twitter is going to be enough to move the needle internally for Doctor Who magazine to change its approach to covers, but it does maybe show that there's a bit of a carelessness, or maybe a bias or some mandates. I don't want to try and ascribe maliciousness to the Doctor Who magazine staff. I'm sure that they probably get their orders from on high, as many people do. if there was a decline in Doctor Who magazine, I think the Chibnall's era secrecy probably didn't help. That's true. What I do really like about Doctor Who magazine recently is that because Rusty Davies and the other producers have been so transparent and they have been talking so much while giving so many clues and not really giving that much away, but still giving enough for fans month on month from Rusty Davies and everybody else, that's been great. And it just shows that it wasn't a Doctor Who magazine issue, it was an issue with the current regime. It's Twitter. People do tend to be hyperbolic and toxic in discourse on that platform. Why I kind of hate it. You're preaching to the choir here. I was cancelled like 2 months ago for stuff I never even said. It's a lovely photo of the pair. Can we all agree with that? At least it's nice to see the main cast smiling in a promotional shot over the series. No, it's a nice image. But like I said, it's part of a general trend. And also, K9's face shouldn't be missing. He's a supporting player in the Sarah Jane Adventures. And yeah, it's not good. And even if there weren't better images that they could have picked, you can edit them. We know that there are some very talented Photoshop artists. Is the full shoot of this available on the Black Archive page? Oh, that's a good idea. Let's take a look. Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith. General. I can understand not having this, like, these images, because who the hell is this guy? I get that. I get it. This one could have been pretty cool. But once again, like, have the logo cover his face like in Monsters, Inc. But it's also, I understand logistically, it's quite hard to not have David Tennant be dominant in an image with Elizabeth Sladen in it, because he looks about half a foot taller, which might be why they've gone for that sitting down shot. They should have just had this as the cover. Please, Doctor Who magazine, you can fix it. That's Nigel Havers. No, I know who he is, and he was very good in the episode, but you put him on the cover, no one's going to know who he is. Here we go, episode stills, here we are. Yeah, like, these would have been better. This is a better one. Once it loads. This would have been so much better to have on the cover. Like, genuinely. You could have had the logo up here. You could have had your competition banner. This genuinely is a much, much better image. Why didn't they use it? They clearly have the license to. This is the first result on the Black Archive. The image that I posted on twitter.com isn't the most high-res version. Like, you can smell the pixelation. But this one is, like, truly high-res. It took half an hour to load on stream. This is a very good image, and you don't have to crop K9. I wonder if the cover was last minute because of the weird K9 crop and mess of fonts. Actually, I don't know anything about fonts. Is this an issue? I'm not a font specialist, and this looks okay to me. The crunch. I love... Yeah, this is such a... Actually, I am tweeting this one. Like, I don't want to assume the internal politics or the internal thought processes and logistics of Doctor Who magazine or anything. That cover of 4 typefaces is definitely a rush. Fair enough, I'll take your word for it more. This would have been a good one. Like, yeah, David Tennant is prominent, but that's because he's surrounded by Elizabeth Sladen and literal children. He's taller. That's fine. It would also include more cast members of the Sarah Jane Adventures. Remember, we love David Tennant, but he only appeared in... For all intents and purposes, one full episode of a 2-part story. He appears at the very end of The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith. So I wouldn't even say he properly appears in 2 episodes. It's going to be interesting to see if the subs cover is different. That's true. If this is the... Sorry. If this... No. Try again. If this is the subs cover, or the other one is the subs cover, fair enough. But this is the one that's on the shelves. Times New Roman, though. Rockwell Condensed. Death of the Doctor. Do they have any good Matt Smith images? Do it. Do it, you cowards, but cover his face with the logo. Do it. They should have put a picture of the silence to make everyone forget about it. Yeah, that's the easiest approach, to be honest. It doesn't look like there's as many images of Matt Smith with Elizabeth Sladen. I mean, call me boring, but I don't really get fussed about what's on the go. Like I said, I don't want to make this a massive thing. I don't want to, like, rally troops, apart from the odd retweet. And I don't want to sort of, like... I don't want to ascribe malice to the Doctor Who magazine team, but it does show a bit of a concerning trend of just having David Tennant on the front of everything. Even though it's meant to be, the Diamond Anniversary year, so everybody should be getting a piece of the pie, I think. David Tennant's time on the show was not the only time in its 60-year history. But yeah, why is there always something controversial with Doctor Magazine every week on Twitter? This week we have this, and last week we had Toxic fans making up quotes that David Tennant was back because of his ego. Now, yeah, like I said up top, there's a lot of drama and discourse every time a new Doctor Who magazine drops, because there is a part of Doctor Who Twitter which genuinely hates Russell T Davies because he's not Chris Chibnall. So they do like to ascribe malice. Like we saw this with the outfit controversy. We've seen this with he mentioned Mavic Chen in an issue of Doctor Who magazine, and Doctor Who Twitter made that a thing for like 3 days. Like I said, there is a lot of faux outrage and controversy that comes from each new Doctor Who magazine, but I do think for this case, a broken clock is right twice a day, and I do think that this is part of a bit of a concerning trend, or I think at worst, a blind spot for Doctor Who magazine. What's this about Mavic Chen? Yeah, they said something, like for the first time in 55 years, Mavic Chen has been mentioned in a Doctor Who script. And they were like, you shouldn't be mentioning Mavic Chen because it was a horrible racial stereotype and yellowface, which is true, but we don't know any context at all, other than Mavic Chen is mentioned in the 60th anniversary special. We have no context, so calling Russ T Davies like racist and everything is a bit, it's not appropriate. This discourse smells a lot like the skinny man discourse. It's the same people every... Yeah, it is the same people every time. The same people, incidentally, who hate me because of things that they've made up in their heads about me. They hate me, but they make a lot of fan fiction about me, which is a very strange disconnect, if I'm honest. But yeah, it's like, this is a case of, I think, a broken clock being right twice a day, but I still don't want to ascribe malice, and I don't want to say that this is Russell T Davies' fault. Not my doctors get very angry at me because I'm not racist or sexist, or I'm not a full-blown neo-Nazi in some cases, but Doctor Who Twitter hates me because of stuff they've made up. Yeah, like I said, I'm not a fonts expert, but this could have been a last-minute cover. But then again, how long... They'll have known for a while that this is a Sarah Jane Adventures celebration. So on February 3rd, on Doctor Who Twitter, the next Doctor Who magazine will celebrate the popular Doctor Who spin-off, the Sarah Jane Adventures, and we'd love you to be a part of it. So let's say that this has already gone to print. As of today, the 27th, they've had weeks to know what image they're going to be putting on the cover. I don't think that the last minute kind of works in this case, based on the available timeline from their Twitter.